Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to celebrate the launch of the Safety by Design online course. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the people of the Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nation, on whose unceded lands we conduct the business of RMIT University. We respectfully acknowledge the First Nations people of the 5 Kulin Nations, their ancestors and elders, past, present and emerging. Today I'm joining from Nunawading in Eastern Melbourne, and as we gather virtually, I also encourage you to acknowledge the lands in which you are joining us from today. My name is Gabby Sincotta, and I am the Centre Manager of the RMIT Centre for Cybersecurity, Research and Innovation, and I'm really excited to be hosting today's event. Before we do dive in, I did want to highlight just a few housekeeping items. So today's live event, our participants in the audience, you won't be able to turn on your cameras or unmute yourself, but this is still an interactive session, and so we will have some time at the end of today's session to ask any questions, whether that be to our panel members or about the Safety by Design course. So please do ask any questions using the Q&A feature. And you're also able to turn on closed captioning for this event, and you can navigate to this by using your toolbar at the top or bottom of your screen. So in terms of today's agenda, first we'll hear from Professor Matt Warren, who is the Director of the RMIT Centre for Cybersecurity, Research and Innovation. And Matt can't join us today in person, but he has recorded a message as he's currently overseas. We'll then be joined by Associate Professor Chris Berg, who's the Director of RMIT Digital3. And following that, we'll hear from the eSafety Commissioner herself, Julian McGrand, who's also travelling overseas and prepared a message for today's exciting event. Then after these introductory remarks, I'll provide a brief overview of the Safety by Design course, and then we'll welcome our panel to the virtual stage to discuss the importance of safety by design from a range of different perspectives. So without any further ado, we'll now hear from Matt Warren.
I'm Professor Matt Warren, Director of the RMIT Centre for Cybersecurity Research and Innovation. I would love to have joined you in person, but I'm currently in London in the UK for work. I'm so pleased to be able to speak to you at the launch of the new Safety by Design course, co-designed in conjunction with the eSafety Commission. Safety by Design is an initiative from the eSafety Commission that takes a proactive and preventable approach to online safety. This course is the first of its kind in the world, and we're very proud to have worked and be partners with the eSafety Commission for this course. The co-design process in this course included 3 sort of major elements working with the eSafety Commission. That was collaboration, active participation and collaboration with the eSafety Commission in the design development process of the course and validation of the course design. Authenticity, ensuring the relevant, authentic and effectiveness of the course is a key aspect of the course in terms of the rich content, the quizzes, the exercise, and alignment. Ensuring that the course addresses the requirements in relation to safety by design. And one of the things that you're going to hear today at the launch event is how important this concept of safety by design is. And finally, I would like to acknowledge and thank RMIT Digital3 for all their support and help in this initiative.
Thank you. My name is Chris Berg. I'm the Director of RMIT Digital3. It is absolutely my honour, the honour of the Digital3 team to support this really exciting new education product. I think the Safety by Design course really epitomizes what RMIT, the research centres in RMIT, like the Centre for Cybersecurity Research and Innovation, can bring not just to research, but to education and to the community around us. As Professor Warren mentioned just earlier, this was co-designed really closely with the Safety Commissioner, with industry, to make sure that it is the frontier and cutting-edge education content that we need in order to deal with one of the biggest challenges that our digital economy faces, which is the cybersecurity challenge, how we can solve that at the absolute foundation of the digital economy. So I'm really excited to support this. I really can't wait to dig into the course myself. I can't wait to hear about the panel. So without further ado, I will stop blabbering on and I will hand over to the rest of the event. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julian McGrand, Australia's eSafety Commissioner. I'm so excited to be empowering a new generation of engineers, computer scientists, lawyers, ethicists, entrepreneurs, and technologists with this unique learning initiative. We're proud to help give students the important tools they need to understand and anticipate the myriad of online harms we see every day, helping to embed a proactive and preventative approach to user safety. You may know that we at eSafety have been developing a Safety by Design initiative since 2018. Now, it's an approach that places safety and the rights of users at the center of the design, development, and deployment of online products and services. And this really represents a huge cultural shift in terms of how online services are conceptualized, designed, and ultimately deployed. And who is better placed to make that change than the architects of technology environments of tomorrow? That is why learning about Safety by Design is so important. It equips the future workforce with the practical tools, guidance, and case studies to assess risks and embed safety protections at the front end. Safety by Design has three primary pillars: service provider responsibility, user empowerment and autonomy, and transparency and accountability. The initiative encourages innovation and surfaces up industry best practices to tackle the most pressing online risks and harms. If we're really serious about moving the dial towards a safer, more civil online world, then we need a renewed focus on safer product design. We need to learn the lessons of today so we can help shape tomorrow. Ultimately, it's in everyone's interests. And back to the adage, if you build it, they will come. I believe if you embed safety, they will stay. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Julie, Chris, and Matt for your opening remarks. So the Safety by Design online course was jointly developed by the Australian eSafety Commissioner and RMIT Centre for Cybersecurity Research and Innovation with the support of RMIT Digital3. As we've heard from Julian McGrand, Safety by Design is an initiative that puts safety and rights at the centre of the design and development process of online products and services. This course will introduce learners to the Safety by Design methodology. It will demonstrate the value of a proactive approach to online safety as opposed to a preventative one. So over to the next slide, which will touch a little bit on the learning outcomes of the course. And just one slide ahead. So in terms of the learning outcomes of this course, after completing this Safety by Design online course, individuals will be able to apply the principles of Safety by Design to the design, development, and release of online products and services. You'll be able to identify the ways technology companies can minimise online threats by anticipating, detecting, and eliminating online harms before they occur. And you'll also be able to implement practices which help embed online safety into the culture and leadership of the organisation. So when we look and think about who this course has been designed for, so that's that audience, It's open to the public and available for anyone interested in the subject matter, but it's likely to be of particular relevance and interest to the following learners from one of these backgrounds. So anyone with an interest in designing and developing online products and services. It may be IT personnel involved in online product and service design and development. Educators who are involved in upskilling students on technology design and online safety. As I mentioned earlier, anyone with an interest in technology policy, as well as engineers, computer scientists, lawyers, ethicists, and entrepreneurs working in the technology space. So it's a really broad audience there, and we really think that it's a course that's really going to appeal to a lot of different users and maximise the benefits of the whole methodology. So today's event is all about the launch of this online course, and we're so excited to announce that you can now register for the Safety by Design course on the Future Learn platform. So we do have a link, and we will be sharing the link and a QR code in just a moment on how you can access this course. So it will be available for an 8-week period and involves approximately 12 hours in total, which is made up of 3 hours of learning each week. The course materials are free and learners can complete the course free of charge. But there is a small cost involved to receive a certificate of achievement, and that's either through a once-off payment or a FutureLearn subscription. And for the next 6 weeks while the course is available, it will be moderated by an RMIT academic, someone who's got an in-depth cyber safety and cybersecurity experience. So we're really looking forward to going on this journey with you as you develop and the skill set of and apply the principles of safety by design. So over on the next slide, I'll just leave it up for a moment or two for anyone who's interested in signing up or finding out more information about the Safety by Design course. We do have a QR code and we'll be sharing this link as well, whether that be in this chat or also on how you can access the course. Fear not, we will be sending lots of communications following this with that code. We will be sharing the link in the chat as well once we get that up and ready to you, and we will make sure that you can access that course following this event. So it's now the part of the event where we'll be welcoming our panel discussion, and it's my pleasure to welcome up onto the stage our distinguished panel members. So Deb Walsh, Leonard Lim, Steph Campbell and Mark Kavanagh.
Thanks, Gabby. My name's Deb Walsh. I'm the Executive Manager of Strategy, Engagement and Research. This includes the Safety by Design Initiative, international engagement and industry engagement as well. I'm joining from Ngunnawal country. I also would like to thank RMIT for their collaboration on this course. It's taken a key initiative of eSafety and turned it into a practical course. So thank you.
Thanks, Deb.
Hi everyone, I'm Leonard Lim, Head Public Policy and Government Relations for the Asia Pacific and Zoom Video Communications. It's a video conferencing platform I hope most of you are familiar with. I'm based in Singapore, but in my role I engage with policymakers, civil society, academics, think tanks on issues that are important to us, including of course online safety and children's safety. So thank you for the invite for this panel and looking forward to speaking with you guys. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Steph Campbell and I work at RMIT, and my role is Cybersecurity Change and Communications Manager. So I work within the cybersecurity team, but my role is primarily focused on educating both staff and students on cyber safe practices.
Hi everyone, my name is Mark Kavanagh. I'm the Child Online Protection Consultant with UNICEF in the East Asia and Pacific office. I'm speaking to you today from Bangkok. but my work supports our country offices across the region. So there's around 13 offices in Asia and the Pacific, and yeah, really looking forward to today's discussions.
Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. And it's wonderful to have not only an Australian but a global context to discuss safety by design. So thank you so much for joining us. I will get started into the questions, and I will take this opportunity to remind anyone in the audience that if you do have any questions throughout the panel session, to please post them in the Q&A feature so that we can discuss with our panel members today. So this first question, it's a question that's really applicable to all our panel members, and it's the first question that I wanted to ask is, how is safety by design relevant within the context of your organisation? And Deb, I might start with you on that one.
Of course, thank you. So we know that industry needs to be at the heart of the process and change the status quo, make online experiences measurably safer and more inclusive. We've been working, as Commissioner said, with industry since 2018 on the Safety by Design initiative. In developing the Safety by Design initiative, we consulted with NGOs, advocates, parents, young people to develop our online assessment tools for startup and enterprise, our investor resources, and our Safety by Design principles, which, as the Commissioner said, is service provider responsibility, user empowerment and autonomy, and transparency and accountability. At eSafety, we drive proactive and systemic change within the technology ecosystem, advocating safety as a third pillar of digital trust alongside cybersecurity and privacy. Safety by Design also underpins some of the requirements under the Online Safety Act. For example, providers may be required to undertake certain Safety by Design risk assessments under the applicable industry code or industry standard in relation to Class 1 content to determine each service risk profile, and also our recently published Basic Online Safety Expectations Guidance also highlights reasonable steps that providers of social media services, relevant electronic services, and designated internet services can take to enable compliance with the expectations. One step is to ensure that all relevant staff are suitably trained, supported through training of the Safety by Design principles. But as online harms are a global issue, we also work international organisations and other jurisdictions to promote and advocate for online safety initiatives, including Safety by Design. And through our Australian Government Cyber and Critical Technology Cooperation Program, which is led by Department of Foreign Affairs, we take capacity building activities in Southeast Asia, which includes our online safety resources as well as regulatory and industry engagement approaches. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Is there any other panel members, perhaps Leonard, if you could sort of describe what Safety by Design, the relevance within your organisation?
Sure, thanks, Gabby. I'll start with a bit of history. So I think most of you would be familiar with Zoom because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So our user base actually really exploded then. We went from 10 million daily active participants in the late 2019, suddenly to 300 million daily active participants in March or April 2020. So before COVID, most of our users were actually large corporates, government institutions, banks, universities. So they were very comfortable with cybersecurity protocols and protecting their online meetings. But once COVID happened, I think most of you will be familiar. Everyone started using Zoom or other video conferencing software, whether it was fitness instructors, yoga teachers, schools, grandparents. So these individuals were not as familiar with how to protect their Zoom meetings. For instance, setting passwords. And then lots of meeting disruptions took place, intrusions, unauthorized screen sharing, including, for instance, pornographic materials. So all this was very ugly. So in a sense, we at Zoom, our culture has always been to reduce friction for our users and make it as easy as possible. But we then realized that in making joining a meeting easy, by letting people not set passwords by default, it allowed unauthorized people to enter meetings. So once all these happened, we took a step back. Our CEO decided in April 2020 to have a 90-day engineering freeze. on all new features and to just focus only on improving user safety, privacy, and security. So what we did then was, among the things we did was, we made meeting passwords and waiting rooms default for all users. So that then I think helped to improve the security and privacy and safety for all our users. That's just one example of how safety by design is important for us. I can share more, but I'll just stop there.
Thanks so much, Leonard. And Steph and Mark, if you've got any comments at this time as well that you can add, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Safety by design is clearly a really important part of the work that I do through UNICEF and through our support with states in the region. You know, being online is inherently risky. We know that. Life is risky. So we encounter these risks every day in everything that we do. That's just kind of the reality. But I think an approach that considers safety from the beginning can reduce some of those risks from turning into, you know, more serious impacts and harms. So it sort of helps to stop things becoming a problem from the beginning. And I think that's a really important stopping and thinking sort of consideration, as Leonard's just spoken about. You know, freezing on design to concentrate on safety can be a really useful step to stop things becoming worse that could be prevented. We also feel that the safety by design approach reflects that rights-based approach of children's lives online, which is really important. So absolutely, we have a responsibility to protect children. We want to make sure that their lives, the way that they're interacting online, the tools that they're using are inherently protective. But we also want to create the circumstances where children, as they evolve, have some control and have some power in those processes. So for me, that second principle in safety by design of user empowerment is quite critical. That the tools that programmers are creating that are available to users create the circumstances to tailor our online experiences. So some particular marginalised groups have, you know, really different risk profiles, and a range of tools being available for them is a really helpful way that they can help to control their own experiences and build safety around their interactions. Yeah, from UNICEF's perspective, this approach of considering safety in the design process is really important, and it's something that certainly we've highlighted in our work in the region, and particularly with lobbying on state regulation and state approaches to child online protection.
Thank you. Steph, if you've got any other comments that you'd like to make, it'd be wonderful to hear your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Gabby. I guess from a university perspective, universities are, as you can imagine, a top target, I guess, for attackers, given the amount of information that we hold, and also, you know, obviously the research projects that we do in collaboration with government entities. So building, you know, safety into the design of things is really imperative from a university perspective, but also, you know, we have students coming through that have had this sort of exposure to online activity throughout their whole lives. Whereas if you think about maybe educators having sort of not grown up in this space and being having taught their subject matters for a long time, this would be a really good course for them to revisit how they can approach teaching these students that are emerging. And obviously it's really important that we're teaching these students that are coming through and the next generation in the workforce how to sort of integrate this also into their everyday lives, so that when they start joining workforces, they're aware of this and they integrate it to the things that they then implement in their future workforce.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And such a really interesting perspective from all of your different respective organisations. Steph, it was a really good leeway there into my next question, and this one's for you specifically. For you, what's the difference between online safety and online security?
Thanks. I guess in my role, whilst I work within the cybersecurity team, we have that sort of back of house operations at the university, and most organisations have a cybersecurity team who's responsible for the tools that they implement to sort of do that, preventing all of the type of attacks in the background. But if you look at all the data online, say for example, Verizon's report recently, 2023 report indicates that 74% of cyber threat is down to the human element. So a lot of the threat can be mitigated by educating individuals on how to stay safe online. So what we try to do at the university, whilst we have all those tools in place in the back end, all the technology, all the IT staff working there, we do our best to educate both staff and students on how they can sort of be vigilant, what they can implement within their own lives to sort of take a step back, have a look at their environment, what seems like a threat, what they can do to sort of equip themselves outside of these technologies that we already have in place.
Thank you. That's a really interesting perspective, and always great to hear the work that's being done and the human element that really does feed into the different risks, whether that be cybersecurity or being safe online. So this next question, I might throw it over to Leonard, and if anyone else has any other items that they want to sort of touch base on afterwards, they can. But how might one go about implementing safety by design, and where would they start?
Thanks, Gabby, for the question. It's an important one. I talked earlier about how we had a 90-day engineering freeze on new features back in April 2020. I think that fits into principle one of design, safety by design, which is service providers' responsibility. I'll talk a bit now about, I think, user empowerment, which I think Mark mentioned. So I think when you think about safety by design and implementing it, it's very important to have users at the forefront. And I'll give two examples and of how we did it. So we found a lot that the meeting intrusions that took place came from intruders who were outside of the host and the typical participants' region or country. So what we did back in 2020 was we introduced IP geofencing, Internet Protocol Advanced Geofencing. So hosts on Zoom could geofence access to their meetings to block out people who are not from their region or their country from joining the meeting. And this was especially geared towards schools, because typically schools, the students are in their country or in their region. So that's one example. A second example is, again, and to keep things easy, we decided to have to introduce user report forms if they faced abuse in their meetings. They could report in the meeting very simply. So in the Zoom meeting, you might notice this green color icon on the top left. It's called a security icon. By clicking it, I think within 4 clicks, you can get to a user abuse report form, and it goes straight away to our trust and safety team. So again, back to the safety by design principle of user empowerment, we wanted to put the power in the hands of users to protect themselves and also make it as easy and frictionless as possible for them. That's why we are thinking about safety by design and implementing it in the tech company. Thanks.
Gabby, could I add a reflection? Just something that Leonard spoke about really just throws up for me something that occurs frequently, I think, in the NGO community. The idea of just stopping and thinking and reflecting on what we're doing is we don't always have space for that, I think. We're always in a rush. There's always lots of priorities that are taking up our attention. So to actually have a process that's spelled out, that's quite clear, that says, hey, let's just take a breath, look at what we're getting into and consider what the potential consequences are is really important. I think with technology, it's really fast moving. You know, the landscape's changing quickly. We've seen artificial intelligence break out in massive ways this year, in ways that the public are engaging with, and we don't always know what's coming. So the moment to stop and reflect is important. From the perspective of children, I think considering unintended consequences is really important as part of that reflection. So sometimes a tool may be created with a particular feature in mind, but if we haven't taken that moment to stop and reflect, it could in fact be used in a negative way. So yeah, that moment to stop and think, I think, is a really important part of safety by design.
Thanks, Gabby, and I might just jump in there too. Great reflections from Leonard and Mark, and I think the work that Zoom did to counter that problem was really great. The tools that we have and what we developed with the safety by design, we talk about those 3 high-level principles, but they're underpinned by supporting sub-principles, and these principles go to more practical applications. So under service provider responsibilities, one of the sub-principles explains how platforms should develop community standards, terms of service, moderation procedures that are fairly and consistently implemented. And likewise, when considering user empowerment and autonomy, which is principle 2, providers should ensure that they are providing technical measures, tools that allow users to manage their own safety and that are set to the most secure privacy and security levels by default. The course here is also backed by the assessment tools, and after somebody has completed that, they actually get a tailored report which acts as both a health check but also a learning resource which provides you with some really good practical examples of what you can do to improve product design from the onset.
Thank you, and thanks all for your commentary on that. There really is a lot of different ways to sort of go about safety by design, but it's really interesting to hear it in a practical perspective, Leonard, and the things that Zoom's doing, as well as Mark. You know, it is really timely to sort of consider and reflect on the pace in which we operate and the importance of really focusing and having this fantastic methodology in place, and of course, like this, how it could what it can mean for society to be able to pause and make a really conscious effort in the way that we're doing and creating products online. So thank you for your commentary around that. Mark, I have another question for you. So what's the importance for education and the adoption of safety by design, and where is it applicable?
Look, a way to consider this, I think, is to look at how the challenges are eventuating. When I look across the region, when I look across the work that UNICEF is trying to do. I was recently in Fiji for a symposium looking at creating safe and online spaces for children and for women as well. There was a real focus on what the experiences related to gender are in that part of the world. I was representing UNICEF and talking about what we see in terms of global trends, but we also conducted a sort of quick and dirty poll with 400 young people through a mechanism called U-Report that UNICEF uses. And the results are really quite surprising. So this is from young people across the Pacific region. 31% of them said that they'd encountered something worrying or offensive in the last week, and a further 23%, in the last day, and 23% in the last week. So that's more than half of children in that part of the world, at least once a week, are encountering something offensive. So that's probably not surprising to anyone, you know, who's attending this event. But then the bit that really struck me, I think, was the next question we asked is about where they found out about digital safety skills. So in that part of the world in particular, parents are not where young people are turning for support. And I think Steph mentioned earlier, the digital divide in perhaps digital natives, those that have grown up with tech, and those in leadership positions is quite stark at times. 31% of young people in the Pacific were teaching themselves about digital safety. So they were accessing information through the tools that they use, through the social media platforms they use. So for us, understanding that the challenge here is that there isn't good explicit teaching necessarily across the world. I think Australia, where I'm from, there's a lot more focus on this. There's government interventions, there's school curriculum that does address this, but across our region, that isn't always the case. So that we see that there's clearly work to be done on building digital skills into school curriculum, into our communities. But I think the reality at the moment is that if young people, as many as a third of young people, are getting most of their information from the tools that they're using, we have a really stark responsibility to make sure that those tools are safe and to make sure that there's functions, as Deb was speaking about, that they can access and use. One thing that's from a child rights perspective that I think is really valuable in this discussion is the idea of what's called evolving capacities. So, excuse me, a 7-year-old and a 17-year-old are pretty different, although in terms of legal definitions, they're both children. But we understand that as kids grow, they need different supports. We need to slowly pull down that support. Vygotsky, the psychologist back in the 1930s, came up with this idea of scaffolding, so that little kids have lots and lots of supports around them, but as they grow, we pull that support back. And I think safety by design allows the flexibility to engage in safety thinking, child online safety thinking, in ways that fits that, that 1930s theory. I'll stop there.
No, thanks so much, Mark. And if there's any other comments from our panelists, feel free to step in at any time. But I do have, and likewise, if there's any questions from our audience, please do post them in the Q&A. We will have some time at the end of our panel discussion to ask any of our panelists any questions. So please do feel free to pop them in the Q&A. Leonard, I do have another question for you, and I do think it's something that perhaps all of our panel members might feel free to add to this. But what do you see as the value of completing this Safety by Design course, and who benefits?
Yeah, I'll start with this. I think so. Our head of trust and safety at Zoom, based in the US, where we're headquartered, actually did something similar back in 2021. Back then, I think eSafety had these online learn at your own pace courses as well. So when he was doing it in late 2021, his feedback about it was very positive, that it really helped him to, it provoked a lot of thoughts on how to make Zoom safer, how to put the powers in the hands of our users, how to increase transparency and accountability. So I understand the RMIT course is similar in that these 3 safety by design principles are central to the course, and I think it's a good introduction, a good overview of safety by design, how one could go about implementing it. But also, I think it sort of germinates ideas, provokes thoughts on what the latest thinking on this issue is. And it's a good platform, I think, a good starting point to then introduce safety by design in one's company. To your other question about who benefits, I think the person taking the course definitely benefits, because I think it opens up a whole vista of ideas and thoughts on what they could do to make their product better, and ultimately the users benefit.
Thanks, Leonard. And do any of our other panel members have any comments about perhaps the value of completing it from your perspective, or some of the users that you're sort of, or the customers or people that you're dealing with, and how they could benefit, even if it's not a direct, it's an indirect sort of benefit?
I can jump in there, Gabby. Well, what we hope to see from this course is that current and future developers, engineers, trust and safety professionals are all taking this course, because we think they play an incredibly important role in shaping the online environment and user safety. I think the value of the current and future tech professionals having foundational knowledge of safety by design can't be understated. I think by undertaking this course, it'll improve the quality of safety of our online platforms. It'll improve risk mitigations to reduce harms occurring on the platforms, and avoid damaging their company's reputations or complying with regulatory obligations, as we have the Online Safety Act. But offer also cost savings by addressing the issues in the design phase rather than costly retrofits and damage control. So I think as the industry prioritises online safety to meet regulatory and consumer expectations, professionals with studies in safety by design will be increasingly in demand. So I would encourage anybody who has an interest in that to absolutely undertake this course.
Thanks so much, Deb.
a reflection on what Deb's just said, I think that's a really important consideration. You know, from UNICEF's perspective, we've certainly been talking about online safety for a number of years, but there seems to have been a bit of a groundswell in recent years as the corporate sector, the technology sector is recognising that regulations are changing. Countries like Australia, obviously, and thanks, of course, to eSafety's strong advocacy, have led the world, but this is occurring, you know, across the region. We see moves towards greater regulation in Southeast Asia for sure. So understanding that that's coming, as you said, Deb, you know, there's the chance to sort of get in front of that, avoid having to spend money later to retrofit solutions, and have the conversations from the beginning. I just make also the point that I should make this point coming from UNICEF, but engagement with young people through these processes is really vital and can be commercially helpful, you know. So the consultation with young people about what they want from platforms is certainly valuable in terms of them being able to sell those features back to them. But I think it also helps in understanding the types of risks that they're experiencing. So yes, there's research in this space and there's an increasing evidence base globally of what risk looks like in the online environment. But I think we need to keep talking to young people about this because it's not always what we expect, and their experiences of the online environments look different, of course, to us as older people, you know, as adults who've been working in this space. That consultation is really important, and I think a useful, you know, possibly a commercially viable thing to do for companies developing tech.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Leonard, Deb and Mark, for your comments on that question. So yes, some really rich insights from different perspectives. We do have some audience questions coming through, which is wonderful, and encourage you to keep posting your questions. This one's directed to Leonard, but is probably still applicable for all our panel members. So what advice do you have, Leonard, for small businesses who may have quite limited resources or perhaps feel overwhelmed by the world of online safety?
Yeah, thanks. It's a very important question, I think. Large companies have much more resources to throw at trust and safety and to think about engineering fixes. But I think Mark made good points earlier about how it's actually commercially important, actually. And I'll make the extra point that I think smaller companies still, I mean, all of us have responsibilities to our users. So much of our daily activities are conducted online now, whether it's payments, social media, news consumption. I think it's, even though a company might have limited resources, it's still a good thing to commit some time to learning about safety by design, because at the end of the day, it's good positioning, I think, for your company, and to really differentiate yourselves with your users positively, and to say that at least I have thought about safety by design, I'm committed to this issue, and eventually there's definitely commercial benefits to taking such an approach. But yeah, I totally understand the lack of time and resources that smaller companies face. But so maybe this online course is a good introduction, right? It's 4 weeks, 3 hours each week, do it at your own pace. Hopefully that's low-hanging fruit that small companies can grab at this time.
I can add to that as well, Gabby. Yeah, I understand that small businesses might have limited resources, but even RMIT, you know, being a massive organisation that we are, my role, there's only one of. So to talk about, you know, cyber safety and spread that messaging, there's only one of me for the whole organisation. So it's not just small businesses that may have limited resources in that space. But in Australia, for example, there's a whole bunch of, you know, online resources that are free to utilise. So the content is already being prepared, similar to this sort of course that we're offering here. There are a lot of stagnant, you know, items that you can, and resources that you can find online that you can just repurpose. So it's not a matter of having to reinvent the wheel and do it all yourself. So there's a lot out there if you just do a simple Google search. You know, the Australian Signals Directorate have a whole bunch of resources out there that you can utilise, the eSafety Commissioner as well. But I think we need to think about the fact that online safety, you know, maybe the approach to take is that it's not just something that we do in the workplace, it is something that we take outside of the organisation as well. So if we talk about it in that way, we're equipping our employees, our peers, but then they're also taking that outside of the workplace and helping their, you know, family and their friends as well. So it's a life skill as opposed to just, you know, a workplace skill as well.
And if I can just add a little bit more to that, just to give a plug to the online resources. So this course, as I said, is backed by assessment tools. And the way that we developed those assessment tools were for smaller organisations and larger organisations. So the smaller organisations go through a series of questions that give them some really practical tools and examples of things that they actually can do, but it's not the huge sort of big organisation assessment that you would do. So I think Steph's right, there is practical examples out there at any size of a company.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really interesting comments as well. Steph, there's been another audience question that's come through to you, and it's touching on sort of education, the tertiary education sector as well. So where do you think safety by design is heading in the tertiary education space, and who's it most applicable to? Who do you think will find this course most useful?
I think given the broadness of the topics that are outlined in the course, I think it's applicable to everyone that works in a tertiary institution. So, you know, in tertiary institutions, we have the operational type staff in the back end, you know, like a typical business, HR, you know, the cybersecurity team as an example, but we also have the academics, the teaching staff. So I think it can be applied and utilised by everyone in the organisation. So, you know, if you think about the academics and the teaching staff, they can utilise what they've learned from the course to apply it to what they're teaching to their students and equip them. But at the same time, from an operational sense, if we're implementing tools and different systems within the organisation, that can also be factored into how we're implementing those from the beginning.
If I can add to that, I think there's a usefulness for those that work in policy as well. So while of course the safety by design principles are hugely valuable for the actual design work, I think those that are working on policy need also to understand these concepts, so that the school policy on devices or the advocacy that the NGO is doing to the government on safety comes from a place of understanding. So a lot of these things can feel a little bit abstract and conceptual at times. We talk about transparency and accountability frequently, but what does that mean in a practical sense can be quite hard to boil down. So, you know, just this week I was in conversation with our Indonesia country office and was definitely talking about the potential that this course had as background learning, I guess, for some of the really high level advocacy that they're doing on a national scale. I think as Lennon mentioned, it's not a huge engagement. You know, 12 hours feels like a lot, but spread across a few weeks and with the opportunity to also kind of ask questions and engage with a moderator, I think there's really interesting chances to unpack the abstraction a little bit for those policy side people too.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that to sort of answer the question a little bit differently, because I see it in two ways. Like we've got the product design, safety by design features, making sure we've got that built in from the start. But then when it comes to also the tertiary and education sector, eSafety has huge amount of resources available online about how to keep an individual, your own self, safe online. So I would encourage anybody who's looking at it, it's probably, in my view, two angles. Is the product design and safety features, but it's also individuals keeping safe online and sort of practical steps that they can actually do to make sure that they're secure and safe online.
Thank you so much. Look, I am conscious of time, but we do have a couple. We can probably answer one more question from the audience. One of them was around sort of availability in different global countries, and I might address that sort of right at the end of the question, at the end of the session. But we do have one final question, and perhaps if there's any of our panel members who are keen to step in and answer this one. So a comment that safety by design is a great initiative. Thank you. And thank you to all the work from the eSafety Commissioner. How can companies encourage how can we encourage companies to build safety into the products if it isn't necessarily mandatory?
I have a quick reflection on that because it's a big part of my work. I think there's moves afoot everywhere, as I spoke briefly about in terms of regulation. So in some places this will become mandatory, but I think the potential to get in front of what's mandatory, to be part of the conversation, is really important. Leonard and I are part of a working group in another space with a focus on Asia and Pacific, where there's a number of companies that are really engaged with that process, that both, being part of a conversation with states, with countries on how to move forward with safety is a really valuable way to advocate, I think. So that's certainly been a success. I think I'm successful, Leonard. I don't know, you can talk about this, but it's been part of the UNICEF approach, is to sort of encourage that dialogue, I think, so that the outcomes suits governments, suits citizens, the populations, particularly children, obviously the UNICEF mandate. But we get there together rather than it being just about what's mandatory and what's regulated. I think there is real genuine interest in that level of engagement at this point in time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an important platform to move things forward. I'll just add one last point actually about encouraging companies. I think it's important for companies to do this before the next pandemic hits us. So we learned the hard way when everyone started using Zoom. We had to sort of have that 90-day engineering freeze. So yeah, it's good to prepare beforehand, before the next pandemic comes. And who knows, your company might be the next digital tool that is the go-to tool in the next pandemic. So good to have safety at the center of it all.
Thanks, Leonard. And Steph and Deb, if there was any other final sort of comments about sort of, you know, how you'd go about getting buy-in or the importance of it, any final comments you'd like to leave with the audience to take into their respective organisations?
I would only say, as Julie said in her email, it makes good business sense. They're right, you want to get on the forefront of this. You want to make sure your platform is as safe as possible for your users. So I would encourage, whether it's mandatory or not, and probably of note is lots of movement afoot, including Ofcom, which is the UK regulator, passed their online safety bill yesterday. So there will be lots of things changing in this space, but yeah, it makes good business sense just to get on the forefront of it and actually build those features in from the start.
Yeah, I think I echo Deb's sentiment there, in that, I mean, a good way to sell it is, from a business case, is, well, what are the implications if we don't do it now? You know, what are we going to have to do reactively in the end, and how much is that going to cost us down the line at the end of the day? So yeah, I think it's really good to get on the front foot there.
Well, thank you so much to all of our panel members and our audience for your questions as well. We are sort of coming to the conclusion of today's session, and we did have one sort of final comment about availability and sort of how you can access the course. So there was one question about availability in Indonesia, and I just wanted to make comment that it is globally available. So it's available in Indonesia or anywhere in the world where FutureLearn is accessible. So this is the QR code now. If you'd like to learn more information, join, sign up for the course. We're really excited about this initiative. We've had some wonderful panel members discuss the importance of safety by design from a range of different perspectives, from industry, from an education sector, from a non-government organisational perspective, as well as from the eSafety Commissioner themselves, from their perspective, who have done made so much progress and hard work on this design, on this safety by design topic. So we do encourage you to look into it, to sign up, and to tell all your friends about it as well, friends and colleagues about the course. So that does bring us to the end of this session. So we will be sending some post-event communications, but we would like to take this opportunity to really thank our panel members. Thank you so much to Deb, Stephanie, Leonard and Mark for your valuable contributions to today's discussion, and thank you to our active audience for your questions and participation, and to all of those who have been involved in making this event happen today. Thank you so much, everyone.